Hello and welcome to World Watch with Open Doors, the series that puts you in touch with the suffering church around the globe. Today we focus on an area of Central Asia which was once part of the Soviet Union, the Turkic field, so called because of the Turkish influence that came with the spread of Islam to the area. From a Christian viewpoint, the Turkic field has been one of the great unreached areas of the world. That is, until the breakup of the Soviet Union, when sudden religious freedom gave rise to new national churches. 10 years ago, in countries like Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, there was not one known national Christian. Now there are hundreds. But after a short period of freedom, the new independent churches are facing fresh opposition. Blaine Spencer has been to the region and now brings a story from this vast but seldom reported on area of the world.
Wherever you walk in Uzbekistan, you follow in the footsteps of some of the greatest travellers in history. This is the famous Silk Road that for centuries brought merchants laden with silks and spices and news from the Orient on the long haul from China to the capital cities of Europe. Traders on the Silk Road provided materials used to build some of the most dramatic Islamic structures in the world that even today tell of the powerful grip Islam once had in Central Asia. When communism flooded across the continent, the Soviets did everything possible to prize the region from the grip of Islam. But when the Soviet Union disintegrated and the republics became independent, the spirit of nationalism was rekindled. The president of Uzbekistan gave his approval to the whole process by gifting this magnificent chandelier to one of the country's chief mosques. The reflowering of Islam had begun.
Thanks to Allah, in recent years, we've got from 3 mosques in the whole region to 100. We're working to restore Islam in this country. The Quran has recently been translated in the Uzbek language, and Islamic schools have been opened up.
In the open atmosphere following communism, ancient Islamic culture may have been revived, but what has been happening in the Christian church can only be described as revival. In his country, this man is the first known native believer. Over breakfast, specially prepared in honor of the guests, Pastor Tahir told me about the dramatic growth of the church in his country.
It has come through people simply sharing the gospel with one another. 5 years ago, there was no national church here at all. Today, we have 120 members. This growth is happening all over the city.
I have not been able to count the number of people I have talked to about the gospel, but I know that more than 20 people have joined the church as a result.
One day, I received a message from the Lord. He told me to ask Him for something much greater than I could do. I shared this with members of my church, and we prayed for a way to reach the whole nation for Christ. Amazingly, the Jesus film became available in our language, and we've been showing that to hundreds of people who want to hear about Him.
You've tried to find God through Muhammad and then through Jesus. What convinces you that Jesus is the truth?
I understood the meaning of the life. It was Jesus. The God's word convinced me concretely one time, and I believe it's true.
In neighbouring countries, the pattern is the same. Pastor Zakir is the founder of a local church.
There would be even more believers if people were not afraid, but as former Muslims, they know they will immediately face persecution from their families and more recently from the police.
Despite the major political and religious changes of the post-communist era, There are some things in the former Soviet Union that have not changed. Turkmenistan's president continues to seek a form of homage from his people more associated with Soviet times. He has even changed his name to Turkmenbashi, meaning father of all Turkmen. His smiling image in every public place and building of any significance communicates a benevolent attitude to his people that, in reality, is hard to find. Ashgabat, Turkmenistan's capital, is only 5 kilometers from the border with Iran, from where developments in Central Asia are carefully monitored. Christians wishing to study at the university here have first to renounce their faith. Muslim extremists, unhappy with the rate of progress towards Islam, have already bombed the central area of Uzbekistan's capital, Tashkent. With a clear focus on self-preservation and a careful eye on the rise of Islamic fundamentalism, the governments of Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan have introduced massive restrictions on the practice of all religious faiths, and the inevitable clampdown has followed.
It's not impossible to have a legal national church, but the government has made the qualifications so difficult that in practice it is almost impossible to be legally registered. If we meet illegally, we are liable to fines and imprisonment.
Forced underground, members of this fledgling church have to meet wherever they can find a space. Until recently, the family which lives here used this home as a church. But with regular visits from the police and drastically increasing punishments such as fines and threats of imprisonment, church meetings can't be held here anymore, and the challenge continues of remaining undetected. To avoid the unwanted attention of prying eyes, our visit had to be cut very short. Until a few months ago, this building was used for open doors training of pastors and leaders. It has been forced to close down. Add to all of these pressures the fact that every Christian in the indigenous church is from a Muslim background and is therefore likely to be persecuted, and a picture soon emerges of a church under siege.
I know I take a great risk sharing the gospel. I have been arrested and kept overnight in prison. I've been fined more than a month's wages. The next fine will be a 1.5 years wages, but no punishment will ever stop.
I'm ready, for Jesus' name, to get the suffering, to go to prison, everywhere.
A park in one of Central Asia's major cities. That's all the details I can afford to give for fear of identifying the person I've come here to meet. Himself a former Muslim, he's pastor of a church full of converted Muslims. If his identity were to be revealed to the authorities, the consequences could be horrendous. Pastor Javlan, his assumed name, converted from Islam 6 years ago because, in his own words, when he heard the gospel, he recognized Jesus as the truth. Pastor Javlan's church has 300 members. His father is an imam in an Islamic mosque.
We have young church in every sense. The average age is 24. Many are students. All have been converted in the last few years. We cannot meet legally, so we have different branches meeting in homes or wherever we can. 4 times we have tried to meet the government's strict rules for registration. Each time we have been refused. I am sure they don't want a national church in this country. It's very difficult for such a young church when we are not allowed Christian literature in our language. We can't openly get Christian education and training.